Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. We are a church of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your identities are welcome here. I'm Ann Hutton, serving as the worship leader today. We are grateful to all of our service participants. It is a community effort with Barb Foss, Walt Rothwell, Myatt Helmers, Stephanie Podolki, Jim Wilson, Chantel Feddersen, Melissa Egler, and our musicians, Lori Helmers, and you've already been treated to the music of Alan Bishop, John Vettel, and Dave Townsend as they play for us the Randall Thompson Suite for oboe, clarinet, and viola. We have come together to celebrate the history of this sacred place where we gather each Sunday morning. A special welcome to visitors and those online. We're glad that you're here. There is a preschool program and a preschool playroom open for young ones just past the lobby, and groups for kids following the Time for All Ages. Newcomers are welcome here as well as in those activities. After service, please join us downstairs in the Commons for refreshments and conversation and fellowship. And at that time, you can find ways to get connected with this church and the community. You'll find information about our church community and upcoming events, both in the online calendar and in your order of service. Our justice partner for this month is the Jeremiah Program, and Allie Hanton-Ebert is the executive director of Jeremiah Program, and she will tell us more about their mission and why you need to support them this morning. Allie.
Good morning, everyone. My name, as Ann said, is Allie Hanton-Ebert, and I am honored to be the executive director of the Jeremiah Program. We are a national organization that works to disrupt generational poverty for single moms and their children. We do that primarily through the lever of education in a two-generational space, making sure that not only are we reducing barriers for moms to be able to prioritize their post-secondary degrees, but we are also investing in our education of our little ones to help ensure that they are kindergarten ready. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with where we are over on Valley High Drive and 19th Street. Street. You guys have been here for like 3.5 years and I still can't get that straight. And so we are the apartment building right behind the new diocese building that they just built. And so on site, we have a 40-unit apartment building that families can live with us on site if they need access to stable and affordable housing. And then we also have a full child development center where kiddos can receive early learning education while their moms are at work and at school. So we would love for you all to come take a tour. Reverend Luke is on our board and an avid supporter of ours, and so I'm sure he'd be happy to facilitate a field trip. I just volunteered him for that without him being here. I'll run that one by him, but I'm sure he'd be open to it. But yes, anyway, I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be here and to share our mission with all of you. And as Ann mentioned, we will be downstairs afterwards to learn a little bit more for those who are interested. And then Ann has also graciously been coordinating a Cook for Kids event where the community members come together as a volunteer group, and then you get to come to campus and serve a potluck-style meal for our families. So I don't know how many of you guys remember the days or are currently in the days of having to make dinner every night on repeat, every night. So our moms are the ones who are like going to school, doing all the things, right? And so on Tuesday nights, we alleviate that pressure for them and our community comes in and provides them a meal. And so it's a wonderful time for community on our campus, and we love when our community comes in and joins us in that mission. So look forward to talking to you all at the end of the service. Thank you.
So as we enter into our time of worship with these words from our minister of the 1870s, the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, May our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. In a moment, our opening hymn, Thanks Be for These, number 322 in the gray hymnal, will call us back. But before we sing, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and greet those around you. Okay.
Good morning.
We ended up candles.
I brought that out. I got one of the octagonal stands for the
Let's
lamp.
light them. words of our chalice lighting are from Reverend Audette Filbert Fulson, entitled, "We Inherit This Free Faith." This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly to a new generation.
I would like to invite our children up. We're going to be looking at the screen, so just if you want to get a closer look. Today, we'll be talking about the history of our church, but our history is so much more than just our congregation's history. Our history goes back hundreds of years, back to the time before cars and batteries and electricity, back to the time when people carried lanterns to light their paths. Today's video is a story about the strength of the light we carry with us. It is titled "A Lamp in Every Corner."
Lamp in every corner, a tale of our sixth principle. We should build a fair and peaceful world. Many years ago, in the land of Transylvania, in a valley watered by rushing streams, lived a group of people of the Unitarian religion. Their small village wanted a church of their own. All of the people of the village labored long and hard to build themselves a church. The stonemasons chiseled great blocks. The glaziers made glass panes and fitted them into windows with lead lines. Carpenters carved wood for doors and pews. The people of the village worked together to make their church warm, colorful, and inviting. Finally, when the church building was done, all of the people of the village stood back to admire it, and then to sing a song of happiness and praise. Their village had a church now, a church set on the hillside, looking down upon the village. "We will eat now," announced an elder of the village, because everyone was hungry after their long days of work. "And later tonight, we will come back to pray and celebrate." So the people of the village went down the hillside to their homes and their suppers, all except one little girl and her father, who stayed behind. They had brought their own dinner. They ate slowly, sitting on the grass on the hillside, admiring their new church with its strong stone walls. After they had eaten, they went back inside, opening those carved wooden doors to go into the glorious sanctuary. "Oh, look, Father," she said, running from picture to picture with her footsteps echoing. "See how pretty the church is? See how grand?" "Yes, it is," said her father, nodding with pride. "But Father," the young girl said, "we have not finished." "What do you mean?" "There are iron lampstands all along the wall, but there are no lamps. The church will be dark when the people come back." "Oh, no, little one. Watch and you will see. The light inside the church come from the people." The little girl and her father looked over the hillside and saw specks of light coming closer and closer. "Each family is entrusted with their own lamp, little one." "Where is our family lamp?" "Your mother is bringing it. She will be here soon." Once her mother arrived, she was able to lift the family's lamp high onto the tall iron stand. All around the church, other families were doing the same. Soon the church was ablaze with light in every corner, for all the people of the village had gathered there to pray and to sing. All throughout the worship service, they watched the lights flicker and glow. When the service was over, her father lifted her high. She took the shining lamp from the lampstand. Her mother carried the lamp home, with the flame lighting the way. The lamp flame lit their house when they returned. "Mother?" she asked. "Yes, little one?" "Father said the light of the church comes from its people." "Yes," said her mother, "but also the people take their light from the church, and we have that light every day." "Yes, indeed," said her mother. "And even when we're not in church, even when the lamp is not lit, we carry the light of truth in our minds and flame of love in our hearts to show us the right way. That light, the light from truth and love, will never go out." "Never?" "Never," said her mother. And always the light of truth and the flame of love from that Unitarian church on the hillside continues to grow and show them and us the way.
Can I tell you something? That light still shines in each of us and in each of you guys. As the children's benediction plays, you guys will meet me downstairs and we'll go back to your classrooms.
My goal this morning as organist was to use every stop on the organ. And you will find out why in this reading. Wednesday evening at the Universalist Church occurred an organ concert at which the new pipe organ was opened. The church was well filled and the audience an appreciative one.
The time appointed for the concert to commence was 8 o'clock, but Mr. A.F. Goodyear of St. Paulo, who was to preside at the organ, had not yet arrived, and the audience was kept in waiting in hopes that he might still appear.
At about 8:30 o'clock, Reverend Deere explained the situation and promised the audience that they should have an organ concert the next night or the night after that, and that 2 or 3 pieces on the program would be given then. Accordingly, the choir sang the opening piece. After this, Reverend Deere announced that Mr. Stein, the gentleman who put up the organ, was present and, while not an organist, would show the power and combinations of the instrument. Mr. Stein took his seat and played a few notes as the attention of the audience was called to the entrance of the church, where the arrival of Mr. Goodyear was apparent with a round of applause. He had missed the train from Owatonna and so just arrived by carriage.
When the concert really began, Mr. Goodyear played an improvisation to show the organ off, and in so doing, he also proved that he was a fine organist. The pioneer organ of Rochester was indeed a splendid instrument.
The instrument is quite a large one, occupying all the space in the organ loft, save room for the choir and a narrow passageway on each side. The society has become possessed of a fine-toned, but it does need tuning now, and handsome instrument, and are justly proud of it.
Thank you so much, Myatt and Lori. The picture that you are looking at is the first organ in Rochester. And that article from 1877 in the local paper was the very first concert for that organ. Now, I'm sure that there were some homes who had organs in place, or there were circuses that came through with calliopes, but this is really the first church organ. And I believe, I am not 100%, but I believe that this image of it is from Grace Church, where it was originally installed. When we went to our next church from what I've read, the organ was relocated, but I believe that this is the original installation. And I'm just going to point out, there's a table right here on the sanctuary area that is this same table before us now from the Young Helpers. And the red back chair, velvet chair, there in the center is out in our welcome area. And we also have some historic candelabra and an outdoor lantern here that are just reminders of the heritage that surrounds us. And my name is Walt Rothwell. Sarah and I have been members of the church for 35 years. I'm not a professional historian. I'm not even in charge of the history committee of this church. We have a dedicated group that has tended to that task for decades now. But I was asked to head the gratitude team as part of our Building Our Future effort as we move toward building our 5th church in Rochester. So I'd like to spend just a couple minutes reflecting on the history of organs in the congregation and the history of those 5 churches. This was the first church that was built. It's the first Universalist chapel with 3 stained glass on each side, I believe. This large structure behind it on the next block is the Rochester Central School, which was later demolished, and that's where the Mayo Building stands now. This church was built, this chapel, I should say, was built in 1866. The first sermons of Universalism were given here about 6 years earlier, just before the Civil War. But it was 6 years before we actually created our own church, and then this chapel was in use for 10 years before our next church, Grace Church, was built. This is the following church as we do our pilgrimage through Rochester. This is First Universalist Church, and we have some current members of the congregation who grew up in that church. It was also located in the downtown area. The chapel and Grace Church were actually on the same plot of land, adjacent to each other. That plot of land is now where the Plummer Building stands. This church was a few blocks away, and I'm happy to tell you it's a parking lot for the Mayo Blood Bank right now. So this building that we're in now on Walden Lane is our 4th church, and we're in the process of planning our 5th. And so this just displays on the map, here's the downtown area where the first 3 churches were. Here's Walden Lane, and this is where we will be in a few years on Viola Road. And this is the Viola Road property that we are also excited about. Many people from the Green Team are actively working on developing it and interacting with the State Department of Natural Resources and with Quarry Hill to understand how we can care for it and all of the opportunities that it presents to the congregation and to the community. This is a representation by the architect of this building before it was built. And the reason I'm coming back to this building is I want to talk about the organ that we just heard this morning and that we will hear again. This organ was dedicated in 1981. There we go. And this display is from the dedication brochure that was distributed at that time. And the gift came from Mary Kaler Hench, who was a longtime member, and her gift was in honor of her mother and her 2 aunts. And there are a number of familiar names on this page, but I really wanted to have a better understanding of who these people were. So this is Mary Genevieve Kaler, who married Dr. Hench. And Mary's mother was Mabel here, and Mabel's two sisters were Elsie and Cora. And so those are the three individuals that Mary's gift were dedicated to, and we'll talk more about that gift in just a minute. Mary's grandfather was John Henry Kaler, the founder of the Kaler Hospital and Hotel. And let's talk just a moment more about Dr. Hench. On the next slide, you'll see, oops, sorry, we'll get to that in just a second. So going through our church archive, in 1916, Mary's mother, Mabel Van Campen Kaler, was chair of the church music committee. In 1926, Mary's aunt, Elsie, was the music director and organist. And in 1981, Mrs. Hench gave the gift to the church to build this organ in her honor. So it was a custom organ built in St. Peter, Minnesota. And it will be going with us to the new church. The dedication service, Reverend Scotty Meeks at the time said, "We thank Mrs. Hench for this splendid instrument of music. Through its beauty and majesty, our lives, as well as those in generations to come, will be greatly enriched and uplifted." And then that sidebar on Dr. Hench, he was one of the three physicians who won the Nobel Prize for the development of cortisone. And both Dr. Kendall and Dr. Hench were on the Mayo staff at that time. So that just gives you some context of who these people were. They were very closely tied not only to the church, but to the music program at the church. And we have them to thank for this.
Thank you, Walt. Good morning. It is good to be with you. I invite you to settle in here as we create a place of communal caring and connection. It's our time to pause amidst the busyness of our lives, to slow down enough to consider the beauty that is here all around us, and to open a space for listening and love. Here, we honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Sue Anderson, serving as our caring coordinator, arranging care for our members and friends in need. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through challenging and happy times. And life can be challenging. We could all use that extra support with what life throws at us. And if you are experiencing those challenges, we encourage you to reach out for support and help. If you need additional care or personal pastoral care, please reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. This morning, our flowers are shared by Ellen and Gary Klein in honor of their son, Jeff, who passed away at the age of 54 last week. We continue to hold them in our hearts as they deal with this loss. In this community, we share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because all people here have value. Each person's experience matters. We lift up those who are experiencing sadness, illness, or loneliness. May the strength and love in our congregation help guide you. And we revel in those who are experiencing joys in their lives. May their happiness lift us all, and may their joy filter into all around them. We send healing strength to Peggy Bailey. Peggy had a pacemaker placed and will regain that strength back during a 4-week holiday at a rehabilitation center, but she's doing well and is in good spirits. And we embrace those church members being guided by Derek Robertson and Reverend Luke, who are on a spiritual pilgrimage to New England and the Boston area as they walk in the footsteps of those who came before us, calling for acceptance and change for a better, more inclusive world. We know that they will be touched deeply through this experience. Cards of support and well wishes are welcome for all. The cards of support list that is compiled weekly contains several members and friends of the church who are experiencing those challenges or happy times, and is posted in the entryway of the church as well as a link in your e-news. We provide cards and postage and welcome you to leave the cards you write near the basket in the front hallway and encourage you to spread well wishes in that way. So now in our space, settle in here and breathe deep the breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning, and above you the sky and the stars shining with their ancient light, holding you in this space, yourself made of earth and stars. Sit deeply here in this community of love and justice, hope and grace. And know that here you are named and you are known as beloved. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God of many names and beyond all naming, we hold in our hearts all those who suffer in mind, body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names you are holding in your heart this day, in joy or sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all those names spoken and unspoken, may we be held in love and grace. These words of meditation come from our forefather, Henry David Thoreau. You must live in the present. Launch yourself on every wave. Find your eternity in every moment. Fools stand on their island of opportunities and look toward another land. There is no other land. There is no other life but this. May the faith in the spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
The ushers will graciously accept your offering to continue the mission and the work of this congregation.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Podolki, and my husband for 50 years was Mike Podolsky. We joined this church in the 1970s, way before many of you were born. Mike died 13 years ago, so I think that many of you never met him and probably wonder why we have the maypole and the Mike Podolsky service auction. You've probably heard rumors about the raucous Boar's Head feasts that we enjoyed in this very room for many years. And if it works, this is a slide of what Mike looked like in everyday life. There he is. I was invited today to talk to you about gratitude and legacy. Two interesting topics to commingle. Mike and I moved here with our two little girls and opened a stained glass studio in 1976. We were unchurched for 12 years or so, and when we were invited to have a show of our stained glass here in this building, I thought we really ought to attend this church for the month of Sundays that our works were up. Well, 1 month was all it took. We had found a spiritual home. The next step was to see if this congregation would accept hardworking, very curious, broke, although we were never poor, starving artists, sort of outrageous, at least Mike was, artisans. The church took a chance and let us be chairs of the fellowship committee for 7 years. And here's where the gratitude comes in. We were so grateful to have found this church, and so grateful that the congregation was willing to play with us. We found grown-up playmates here. Together we planned the first of maypoles, themed potlucks, all youth plays, family campouts at Oxbow, and then we were lucky enough to book the group camp at Whitewater for several weekends, or several years over the Memorial Day weekends. We organized as many possible UUs to attend the Family Week in Camp Olson up at Longville. I'm going to do an aside here, because they were very puzzled about all of us because we would only hum the doxology. And so we had to teach them to sing a UU grace before our meals, the one about the earth is good to me. So we left a little legacy there too. So this congregation gave us the space and permission to plan the maypole and the notorious Boar's Head feasts. Let's see what happens. Those are still the maypoles. There's Reverend Luke. His very first Sunday here was a maypole. I mean, how could he not join us? Okay, so you're going to see some pictures now. Well, let's see what happens. Yes, some of the newcomers here, you're going to get a chance to see what our venerable older church members look like when they play dress up. Okay. Reverend Luke said 2 weeks ago that this sanctuary room was built without sunshine. It makes a fabulous pretend castle feast room. Okay. But it's short on windows for stained glass. I was grateful to be trusted to design the stained glass hangings that you see here. And with a lot of gratitude that Mary Elizabeth Sheehan was willing to teach us how to dye the silk and set the dye. I have gratitude to the Neural family, who trusted us and the youth group to create a stained glass memorial window for their daughter, Valerie, that is now installed in the chapel. At this point, I was going to start to list all the artists, elected people, musicians, medical doctors, researchers who have left a legacy here. But I was told I didn't have enough time. So I do have a list. If you ever want to see it, I'm sure it's very impressive about the people of this church. So just know that gratitude goes both ways, those giving and those receiving. And that's part of the legacy of this congregation. This church community has had, does have, and will have a profound impact on the spiritual lives, the physical lives, the artistic lives of those who live in this community. I think I can say, on behalf of all the talented people who attend here, they are proud and grateful for the space and permission given to them to share their arts and talents with you. And they are proud to be part of the legacy of this church. And I think I can speak for the many past, present, and future members of this congregation that we are grateful for your work and talents. And that, my friends, is how I think I can link gratitude and legacy. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Barb Foss, and today's reading is sourced from the South Dakota Historical Society 2008 publication, a chapter by Lisa R. Lindell titled Sowing the Seeds of Liberal Thought, Unitarian Women Ministers in 19th Century South Dakota. The Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister here in the 1870s. We know of her affectionately, as each Sunday morning we are welcomed with her message of hope and good cheer. And if you're like me, that had been the extent of my knowledge and understanding about her. As someone born and raised in South Dakota and a horse girl from way back, I'm thankful for this opportunity to learn more about Eliza and provide a glimpse of what it was like for her to live and minister in the rugged and rural developing West. She was one of 11 siblings, born in 1844 in a poor area of Maine. Her father, Allen Tupper, was a liberal Baptist minister. Her mother, Ellen Smith Tupper, was a writer, editor, and nationwide authority on beekeeping. In the 1850s, the family moved to Iowa. It was a wilderness then. Eliza graduated with honors in 1866 from a Baptist college and prepared to become a missionary abroad. With the Baptist rejection of the notion of a woman as minister, coupled with her own troubling internal questions about doctrine and the concept of eternal punishment, she shifted her outlook and she converted to Universalism, noting quietly that she had left the devil behind. She entered divinity school where she met William Wilkes and they married in 1869. She served Universalist and Unitarian congregations in Wisconsin and Colorado, and here in Rochester, Minnesota, where she ministered the Universalist Society and, as we know, was ordained the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes on May 2nd, 1871. In 1878, the couple moved to the village of Sioux Falls, where William grew his law practice and later became a judge. Eliza ministered in Sioux Falls and later sought a full-time minister for the Sioux Falls congregation, which allowed her to continue her mission of outreach. Riding a circuit from church to church, she provided sermons and pastoral care in the Southern Dakota Territory, Minnesota, and Iowa. It was during their time in Sioux Falls that the last 3 of her 6 children were born. The Sioux Falls congregation grew, and with it, the vision of a church home and building plans. In 1888, they celebrated the completion of their church named All Souls. The building seated 200, included a library, Sunday school room, parlor, and a fireplace on which the word unity was carved. Unity was also the name of a weekly publication of the Unitarian Post Office Mission, which distributed liberal religious literature to isolated free thinkers of the Western prairies. Wilkes quoted the words of a Dakota farmer who found solace in the liberal religion. Knowing that God is a being not of anger, but of love, I look up to the stars, with only joy and thankfulness. Eliza was not alone in her calling. 4 other Unitarian female clergy emerged, each with ties to Wilkes and ministry in South Dakota. Mila Tupper, Eliza's 20 years younger sister, was greatly influenced by her older sister and went on to serve ministries in Indiana, Michigan, and Nevada. Caroline Bartlett became a full-time minister in Sioux Falls during a time that Wilkes ministered the Unitarian Society in Laverne, Minnesota, and Rock Rapids, Iowa. Helen Putnam, a guest clergy at All Souls in Sioux Falls, initially settled in Huron, where she took over pastoral duties of the Unitarian Sunday Circle, another congregation that was formed by Wilkes. She later established her base in Jamestown, North Dakota, and from there traveled far and wide, logging over 4,000 miles in 1890 alone, performing funerals and weddings and delivering sermons and lectures to groups large and small. Blanche Bagley and her minister husband were both ordained and installed together as joint pastors at All Souls in Sioux Falls in 1889. The following day, Caroline Bartlett was ordained in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Helen Putnam was ordained at Laverne's Unity Church. Think of it, 3 women ordained in 2 days, marveled Putnam. Surely we are coming to the front, she concluded. Eliza Tupper Wilkes and these women of liberal faith worked tirelessly under challenging conditions and remained true to their mission. At the center was their message of hope and progress and the pursuit of equal rights and reform. Of the tiny but resolute congregation that Eliza Tupper Wilkes founded in Minor County, Dakota Territory, she wrote, "Our success gives me courage to undertake anything and to hope for everything."
It's been mentioned that nearly every Sunday, Reverend Luke speaks the words or makes reference to Eliza. And I would just mention, you may have noticed on the back wall where the camera sits, there's a Scotch tape picture of Eliza. And I can only imagine that as Luke preaches, that's a source of inspiration for him, as it is for me, and I hope you'll agree. Our first slide is just a reiteration of what we've seen before. The first sermons given in the area were 1860 by a minister from Indiana. In 1866, that first chapel was built, and Silas Wakefield was the first settled minister. The third minister is on the next page, and that is Eliza. Before she was married, she went back to Wisconsin for a year to marry William Wilkes, and then returned for about 3 years, and her first child was born in Rochester. Now, she left in 1874. Grace Church wasn't built until 1877. That was the concert that we heard about earlier. And it's interesting to me, well, did she see Grace Church? Did she preach in Grace Church? And we'll know the answer to that in just a moment. So on the next page, the UU Faith in Rochester dates with the church itself 158 years now. We're now planning on our 5th and largest church. We have our 33rd minister in place right now who's on his pilgrimage, he and his posse. And in the next few minutes, I just want to reflect a little bit more on Eliza because she is so inspirational to me. This is another local newspaper from 1873, about the time she was leaving. And it said, "The 3 years of the relationship enjoyed by pastor and people were very pleasant and are recalled by both with much satisfaction." And then on the next slide is a separate article from the same time period, 1873, and the first paragraph says, "The many friends of William Wilkes and his wife, the latter of whom has had pastorate of the Universalist Society in this city for 2 or 3 years, will regret to learn of their decision soon to leave Rochester." And then the last paragraph says, "We, in common with many of our readers, sincerely regret to part with Mr. and Mrs. Wilkes, as we know that the best and kindest wishes of hosts of friends will follow them in their journeys and abide with them in their new home. And then in the same issue of that local paper, the separate little posting says, a vacancy made in the executive board of the Library Association by the resignation of Mrs. Wilkes. So we know she was engaged in the library effort before it became a public library. It's my understanding, and there are people who know more about this than I do, but when the public library in Rochester was created, the UU Church donated their entire library to that collection. On the next, there is an article from the local paper in 1881, so now about 7 years after she left Rochester. And in the lower right corner, there will be services at Grace Church Sunday morning, sermon by Reverend Mrs. E.T. Wilkes. So we know she came back, was invited back, and preached in Grace Church. And we're doing a number of activities as the gratitude team to honor Grace Church in particular. So it's very meaningful that we know that she was there. So after leaving Rochester, we know that Eliza and her family spent time in Colorado, then a long period in Sioux Falls, eventually going to California, and apparently a number of her children were involved in the early film industry there. The description of her career says that she spent many years on the circuit, traveling from town to town, ministering to as many people as she could. Once churches were established, she tended to hand them off to another pastor, often another woman pastor from the Iowa Sisterhood. And she died in 1917 on the East Coast while visiting there. A couple remarkable things about her career. As Barb described, there were a large number of women ministers, especially in the Universalist Church in the 1800s, but those numbers died off as we approached 1900, and there were a variety of reasons for that, but Eliza was one of the few to persevere until her eventual death in 1917. And it was not until 100 years later that women, for the first time, constituted over half of the ordained Unitarian Universalist clergy. So it shouldn't surprise you that a woman with that type of career would have a monument in her honor. And that monument sits in Sioux Falls, where she spent so many years and established the All Souls Church and their public library, and was an inspiration to many there. And one quote, she was beloved for her faithfulness out of the pulpit, as well as for her ability in it. Her modest, gentle demeanor was much admired by all women of the area. So that's a tribute to Eliza Tupper Wilkes. I hope you'll agree she's just a remarkable woman. This is only one of many tributes we'll try and do over the next year or two, and to revitalize some of the important artifacts that we have on hand. I will be downstairs during the coffee hour at a table if any of you have questions, suggestions about the efforts that we undertake. And the last slide I want to show you, if you create a monument, you never know who's going to show up. That's our Reverend Luke and his family, who just visited there recently and took a selfie. So if you could please rise in body or spirit, we will sing the final hymn accompanied by this wonderful organ. Thank you, Lori.
I'm not sure where the benediction words went. All the papers of all this wonderful information. So we will simply reflect again on our chalice lighting. We have inherited this free faith. This light we kindled is set in the lamp of our history. We inherited this free faith from the brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly to a new generation. May it be so. Amen.